Welcome, everybody, to the Contextual Christian Church Bible Study, where today we're going to read Ezekiel chapter 27, verses 8 to 22. I'm going to pray it in. Everybody, bow your heads. Father, thank you for getting us on this Bible study today. As looks like we're going to get into probably another lesson throughout for our weeks. So let's go ahead and get started. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So last time what we had gotten into, we had where I got to say actually what we got into the time before last time first. We had finished up speaking about the country of Tyrus and how they were not only making fun of the children of Israel, mocking them in the midst of their problem that God is bringing up to them, but also were wanting to take advantage of them, thinking they'll be built up and everything. And then last time could be summarized in its entirety by one sentence. Tyrus thinks it's amazing and has some legitimacy to the claim, but all of that is going to be taken away. That's what we went through last time. We got into from the very beginning about how the fall of them, it's going to shake the whole islands around them. We got into about they're a country that is strong in the sea and they have people that they're seafaring men and they're going to lament, they're going to be sad because of this. They have everything going for them. And then we started getting into even more detail about how they're going to go down into the pit, hell, and how everything that they have is going to be gone. And God is going to make them as an example for people forevermore because of how what is happening to them and their fall, not even just on earth, but even to even into hell. And so it was bringing up about saying to this was God telling to Ezekiel to let them know this. And that's pretty much all we went into time and time again last time. Where in 27, it was just lining up everything that they're so amazing about, from their mast, which is the thing that holds up the sails, being made of cedars of Lebanon, their clothing being so beautiful, their sail being blue and purple from the islands of Elisha, just going in about how amazing Tyrus has it and why their fall is going to be so crazy. Because they think that they're perfect. They think that they're perfected in beauty, in their beauty. So now today, I'll go ahead and switch it to our first section so that Charles can read. And go ahead, Charles, when you're ready.
All right, I'll be reading Ezekiel 27, verses 8 to 12. I'll give it a couple seconds. The inhabitants of Zidon and Arvad were thy mariners, mariners, thy wise men, O Tyrus, that were in thee, were thy pilots. The ancients of Gabal, is that Gabal? Yeah. Gabal and the wise men thereof were in thee, thy caulkers. All the ships of the sea with their mariners. What did I see? Mariners. I might have heard that before. Mariners. Matter
You
of
were
fact,
right with
give
Mariners.
me. I was about to say. I was going to double check that. So Mariners
There's a
were in.
baseball team named after that word, or what it means, actually, I should say.
I think that's how you say it too.
Yep.
Mariners were in thee to occupy thy merchandise. They of Persia and of Lud, it is Lud, and of Phut, Put were in thine army. Thy men of war, they hang the shield and helmet in thee. They set forth thy comeliness. The men of Arvad with thine army were upon thy walls round about, and the Madims were in thy towers. They hang their shields upon thy walls round about. They have made thy beauty perfect. Tar- Tarshish was thy. No, let me stop. No, no, no. I got to read 12. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead. They traded in thy fairs. So, from my section going down, another list of all these great and wonderful things that Tyrus had available to them. They're mariners, wise men of Gabal, um, they of Persia and of Lud and of
You
Phut
forgot something.
being in their armies. Uh,
What are you supposed to do if there's a word you don't know?
so for mariners, Strong's definition: primitive root, properly to push forth, but used only figuratively, to lash, that is, the sea with oars, to row, or implication to travel. So the mariners sound like the row, row, row your boat. They sound like the people that row the boat.
Mm-hmm. Look it on the internet.
Give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old fashioned word for sailors. So we're getting into the inhabitants of Zidone and Arvad being the sailors. So that's the mariners.
Exactly.
Now let me
So
get
the
into,
ancients of Gibal and the wise men thereof were in the thy caulkers.
yeah, I'm looking that up now.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is H919, Strong's from H918, a gap or leak in a building or a ship, breach, caulker. We've been talking about sea stuff. So the
So in
second
other
one,
words, there's another word that we use today that's similar to that word.
that's similar to caulkers.
Yeah. Even has some of the same letters.
Are you
You
talking
ever
about
had a
the
hole in
this?
the wall?
You talking about the caulk you put on the lining in the
Exactly.
bathrooms and everything?
Not just on the lining, but if you got a hole in the wall. Caulk is used to seal. It's a seal for gaps. That's what it's for. So you don't have air coming through, you don't have other stuff coming through. That's what it's for. So think about that as in with the caulkers. What would that mean there then in relation to the surrounding context?
Bringing up the ancients of Cabal and the wise men, they're responsible for the gaps of the ships. They're responsible for fixing the holes and all of that. You mean in that reference?
Exactly. So we got people specialized in every portion of running a ship, from the rowers and the sailors to even the people that are sealing it up when there's a leak.
Yeah.
All right, now go ahead now that we've explained that those words.
Uh, I'll go back to 10. I might have said it, but I'll say it again if I didn't. Persia, Lud, and Phut, being in their army, men of war. Verse 11. The men of Arvad with thine army were upon thy walls round about. So Arvad, their armies were on the wall. They had a lot of that's that's already how many groups of people we got now? One, two, three, four, five, six. That's seven groups. You had to go against God's people. I'm already on seven groups of people just in my section, eight groups of people in my section alone that are with Tyrus. And the Gamadims are in thy towers. They hang their shields upon thy walls round about. They have made thy beauty perfect. So the Gamadims were in the towers. Oh, nine. I forgot about verse 12. Tarshish was thy
Not
merchant.
Gamadis, Gamadines. Remember, it does the
Gamadims?
it's a well, think about
Yeah.
it. It's an A, right?
Yeah, I'm missing. My bad. I'm missing the A. Gamadims. And then Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches with silver. So Tarshish, being a merchant with different kinds of well, it brought up the riches, silver, iron, tin, lead, traded in all these different things. There's a lot of just in my section alone, we got a lot of people that are supporting and being there for Tyrus. And you have to go against God's people.
Supporting. What's a merchant, Charles?
Well, merchant sales merchandise, but
There you go. That's not support.
but you're bringing supplies.
No.
So you're not bringing supplies to sell because they got to sell. When they bring it, they got to sell something.
Well, hold on. But you said supporting. If you're a merchant, does that mean I support everything you do just because I sell to you?
No, you're just selling.
Exactly. So it's not a support. What is it? And it's not even on your side. It said they are thy merchants, right?
Right.
So what would that mean then?
They just sell.
Yeah, they sell to you. So in other words, you're buying from them. They're selling to you. In other words, you're losing your commerce.
So then just eight, and then the one that sells, and then that's it. That's all I got from my section.
Not just sales. Sales to who?
Tyrus.
There you
We're
go.
still on the subject of Tyrus. So
Now, why does that matter to point that out?
uh the only way I can think about it is to anybody catching up or like first time listener, so they
Mm-mm.
can kind of understand. Or
Nope. There's a more important reason.
I can't think of it right now.
All right, Thomas, give you a chance. Why is it important to point out that when it says the merchant, that it is selling to Tyrus and not just saying to sell?
Um,
Don't forget. Oh, there you go.
didn't we read about something? A guy was saying he won't be able to they won't be able to build themselves back up or something like that.
Yeah.
So if
Good
they
job.
can't buy, they can't build.
If you can't buy, you can't build, you can't grow, you can't get anything. So pointing out that these are the ones that are selling to Tyrus and merchants are not just selling. Merchants also buy for people. That what it is a merchant is somebody who delves in merchandise. They're not always the salesman. Sometimes they're the one who gets things for people. So in other words, if you no longer have merchants, you no longer have a connection to the outside world in your trade, the ability to buy or sell. So if you just point out that these are people who sell things and not point out the context that these are people selling to Tyrus or buying from Tyrus, you're not pointing out what Tyrus is actually, why they think they're amazing and what they're possibly losing. I'll give you a perfect example, Charles. If your entire household only makes money selling on eBay, because you're not allowed on any other platforms. And then eBay locks you out. What are you going to do now?
It's hopeless at that point.
That's why it matters. Not just for the people who haven't been on, but you lose a major part of that context if you don't explain that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
All right. Oh, and one other thing to point out about that, where it says, by reason of the multitude of the kind of riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead, they traded in thy fairs. So that means you're not even being able to trade when it comes to the financial of money. So not only can you not sell your goods or buy goods, but you can't even get exchange of money or get paid for it. Now then, I'll go to the next section. But does anybody have any comments or questions about the first section? Now would be the time to raise your hand. All right, then go ahead, Thomas, with the second section.
Ezekiel, we read Ezekiel chapter 27, verses 13 through 17. Give it a couple of seconds. Yavan, Tabal, Meshech.
Oh, wait. Thomas, one thing
Can
I
you hear
did
me?
have to say, yeah, but hold on one second. Charles, I think you do need to stand up, though. You sound like you're not able to think clearly the way you're speaking.
Yeah, I can't stand up if there's no AC. I have to sit in my car. I'm not tired. I'm extremely hot and dehydrated. This is the only AC I got right now.
All right. If you do have an issue like that again, try going over to my place because at least mine is doable, and I got the stuff in the fridge and stuff too. All right.
Got it.
All right. Go ahead, Thomas, and
I'll start
restart.
over. I'll be reading Ezekiel chapter 27, verses 13 through 17. Give it a couple of seconds. A couple more seconds. All right. Yavan, Tabal, and Meshech, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men in vessels of brass in thy markets. They of the house of Togarmah traded in thy fairs with horses and horsemen and mules. The men of Dedan were thy merchants. Many isles were the merchandise of thine hand. They brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. Syria with thy merchants by reason of the multitude of the wares of thy making. They occupied in the fairs with emeralds, purple, and embroidered work, and fine linen, and coral, and agate. Judah and the lands of Israel, they were thy merchants. They traded in thy markets wheat of Minnith, and Penag, and honey, and oil, and balm. So pretty much here, we're just getting more into depth regarding to the merchants and the things they would barter and things of that nature. But I'll go ahead and break it down. 13, I'll read that again. Yavan, Tabal, and Meshech, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass. So we have Yavan, Tabal, and Meshech. Those are the merchants, the ones doing the trading, the vessels of brass in the market. Then we go over to
Vessels of
let me read
brass.
vessel, huh?
Vessels of brass.
Vessels of brass in thy markets. Hold on. They traded the persons of men
Mm-hmm.
and
Forgot something.
They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass. The persons of men. So they selling people?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
slavery.
so they home, bro. So they got
Well,
people slaves for sale. I'm not talking to you. I was a biker outside. They
oh no,
got
I thought you were talking about the Bible. There's some people. Come
nah, dude.
on,
I live right
man.
above. I live right above a bar. A bunch of bikers who come in is revving their freaking engines.
That's
Um.
fine. We don't hear it.
Oh, good. I didn't know that. Okay.
What happens
So
when you
back
got a
to it.
good headphone?
I knew he was gonna say that. I should have just waited. Uh. So we got them also selling slaves, trading slaves and vessels of brass in the market. Javon, Tabal, and Meshach are doing that. And then number 14
It
real quick.
goes. One thing I do want to add to that.
Go ahead.
It goes to back up the point. We said before, the Bible doesn't condemn slavery, but it doesn't approve of slavery either. Neither side. The only thing it does is speak on how to treat if you have slaves or how to deal with slavery. And when we look at how the Bible describes when the children of Israel could have slaves and how and why and how they treat them, it's a very different thing than other nations. So there is, if you look at it from that perspective, there is a righteous way to have slaves, and there is a sinful way. It doesn't say it's good or bad. Kind of like owning a TV. Can you have a TV and it not be used sinfully? Yes, but you could also have a TV and it be used sinfully. It's not righteous or sinful. Depends on how it's done. But here, they're losing that. Now, one thing I will say though, remember my hint before, because you guys both slipped up on this. My hint before we got started was this. There's an easy way to explain. If there's an easy way to explain, you don't have to over explain. All right. So there's a couple individual things you might want to explain. However, Thomas, do you really need to go into details on that level with this for us to understand what we read?
No, I think that what I first said was good.
Exactly. The only thing in your section that I would say you have to explain is persons of men, if you don't know what that means. But if you do, that's a pretty straightforward one. Then going through these, you don't need to explain horses or mules. You don't need to explain horns of ivory and ebony. Well, you might want to explain ebony, but ivory and ebony. But anyways, that's not a necessity. Then we got different jewelry and fancy clothes. So in your section, is there really anything that needs to be explained besides persons of men if you didn't understand it?
Yes.
No. Yeah?
Yes. The
What needs to be
different
explained?
merchants for different things that were being sold. That's what I was getting into.
I would disagree. Because who is the focus on what we've been reading?
Tyrus.
Tyrus.
So
So
they're
if you
all selling.
explain they're all going to, and they're not selling to, these are just all the places that are selling in Tyrus and selling and buying in Tyrus. So what would that make Tyrus?
What would that
Tyrus
make
would,
Tyrus?
yeah,
I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean.
Tyrus would be the port. Tyrus would be the
Oh,
exchange
okay.
place. This where everybody meets up to do their sales and everything. So do you need to list every single person in order to understand the context? Because remember, the context is just so we understand what we're reading. Was there
Yeah.
anything in your section that was hard to understand, or if you
Nah,
explained that, you see what I'm saying?
I
That's
was
where
literally just gonna list all the merchants, but you're right though.
that's where it goes, and where I explain about you guys tend to reread instead of explain. Because by saying that you got all these merchants come into Tyrus to sell these different types of products, and you could, if you even if you wanted to, you could say including even some of slavery and jewelry and other stuff. Even saying it like that, you just explained everything enough detail for somebody who's following along to understand what you just read. And it took one sentence to do so. You see what I mean?
Yep.
And same thing with you, Charles. In your section, you could have shortened that a lot more, but you were too busy going verse by verse. You both slipped up on that. And it's not that you made a mistake like you did something wrong, but you over explained beyond the necessity. When it's that simple to remember, the point and portion of explanation is to make sure that we know that you understand what you read and that you're making it easy for other people to understand what you read. So if what you read, if the entire section could be summarized in one sentence and a couple details, that's all you need.
Got it.
All right. Now, with that in mind, does anybody, there's one more interesting part that you could bring up in your section, Thomas. What is the interesting part?
Hold on one second. Back up, please. Thank you.
I do what I want. I'm gonna stay right here.
He's like, can we go outside? I want to go exercise. Breathe in, out. I was like, bro, get away from me. All right, let me see. Let me skim through 15, 16, and 17.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, is it regard to like we have Syria and Judah all in like the same area in Tyrus
Not
selling?
Syria. Judah and the land of Israel.
Oh, okay.
We have these lists of all these different people selling to them. And the reason that Judah and Israel is interesting is, weren't they the whole reason they're going through this is because they were talking about taking advantage of Israel's downfall? So you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about taking advantage of their downfall, and they're one of the merchants that sell through you. They're one of the ones that work with you. And you were talking about taking advantage of their downfall. That's why it's interesting the fact that they're listed here. It would be different if they weren't listed. It would be different if they weren't talked about by Tyrus that they're going to take advantage of the Israel's downfall. But they're literally one of the people trading with you or trading in your market. Secondary reason why that's interesting. This is the first time we got to see any list of what the children of Israel did sell. We haven't been able to see any merchandise or trading from the children of Israel at all. The entire time we've been reading the Bible, we haven't seen it once. The closest that we've seen to it is the ability to buy slaves that were already slaves. But we haven't gotten into Israel's trade at all. This is a first. So we can look at some of the things that the children of Israel used to sell. They used to sell wheat. They used to sell honey, oil, and balm. Now, what's balm? Besides the food I'm eating.
You said
Just
balm,
yes. The last
like
word in
for
your
your
section.
lips, for your lips.
Is that what it is? Or are you just
Let me
assuming?
check. I was thinking about lip balm, but let me check. 17. Crack and sleek distillation that is balsam. Hold on. A kind of balsam, balm, salve, a medicine. Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
We're talking about meds, talking about type of medicine. So it's interesting to be able to see all the stuff that Israel's selling, and interesting to see that they happen to be one of the merchants that Tyrus is wanting to screw over. What does that say about everybody else? You see what I'm saying? So now, does anybody have any comments or questions as we go to the final section? Now would be the time to raise your hand. All right. Then I'll go ahead and read today's final section. Ezekiel chapter 27, verse 18 to 22. Give everybody a second. All right. Verse 18. Damascus was thy merchant in the multitude of the wares of thy making. For the multitude of all riches in the wine of Helmon and white wool. Dan also and Yavan going to and fro, occupied in thy fairs, bright iron, cassia, and calamus were in thy market. Dedan or Dedan was thy merchant, in precious clothes for chariots. Arabia, Arabia, no, Arabia, and all the princes of Kedar, or Kedar, they occupied in thee in lambs and rams and goats. In these were they were, excuse me, in these were they thy merchants, the merchants of Sheba and Ramah. They were thy merchants. They occupied in thy fairs, the chief of all spices and all precious stones and gold. All right. Now, this is just a continuation of more of the merchants and what they sell inside Tyrus, pointing out again how amazing they are and all they had going for them. But there is an interesting part here that I do need to point out. And it's in verse 18. And I'll give Charles the chance first, then Thomas. What is the interesting part to point out about verse 18?
I have to keep thinking about it. Come back to me.
All right. Oh, wait, that really wasn't fair. I got to give you a hint because that was way too open ended. And there is a hint I could give. It relates to the New Testament.
Now I don't have it.
Okay. Thomas?
Let me read it one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Damascus was thy merchants in the multitude of the wares of thy making. For the multitude of all riches, in the wine of Helbon and white wool. Yeah, I do not know.
All right. I'll shorten it, give you guys one more hint, and let's see if you can catch it then. It has to do with the white wool. Charles?
No, I don't have it.
All right. Thomas?
Um, does it have to do something with complexion and Jesus?
Yeah, there you go. Right on the money. Good. When it describes Jesus in Revelation, I mean, in the New Testament, when he comes back, it describes his hair as being white like wool. But people skip the whole white part when it comes to the wool, and they think about wool for the texture. And why do they do this, Charles? Should be able to get this one.
For like the whole race thing to make them sound like he's.
Yes, exactly. Because if you think about hair that's matted like wool, which hair do you think of? You think about black folk. So the thing is, they skip the whole white part and they think where it says like wool. It doesn't say like wool. It says white like wool. But when you think of wool, you don't think of white wool. Normally, if we think of wool, we think of gray or like a whitish gray, but it's still got a tinge of gray in it. We don't think of wool as being white normally. That's why it's interesting here that what they sold here was white wool as part of it. That means that when they gave the depiction of white like wool, that number one, it existed hundreds of years even before up until that time. So that means that it was not a mistake. Just like when Jesus said that when he claimed himself to be one with the Father, and the children of Israel went to go stone him for blasphemy, the children of Israel weren't confused. They knew what they were doing. They understood that by comparing himself like that, he is making himself out to be God. So there was no confusion there. And just like having the white wool shown here means also when it says white like wool in Revelation, that was not an accident. That was not a confusion. That was not a misunderstanding. They meant the color like wool. They did not mean the texture of wool. Does that make sense, Charles and Thomas?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
All right. Now then, does anybody have any other comments or questions before we pray out the Bible study portion? Now would be the time to raise your hands. All right.
Matt, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Some guy was trying to ask money and trying to claim he got 4 kids at a hotel. I don't know you. I'm not going to give you money. I don't know you. If I knew you, maybe. So, back to it. I'll go ahead and pray us out. Everybody bow your heads. Father, thank you for this day that you've given us to be able to read your word and to understand more, to be able to see more about Tyrus and all they had going for themselves and every single thing that they're going through, and how they had so much potential if they wouldn't have screwed off, but it still worked according to your will. So, God, as we go forward from this Bible study, we just pray that we never become like that. Even though we see the corruption that's going on in Israel today, don't allow us to get to the point where we start talking bad about Israel. Even if they are deserving, it's not our place. Our place is just to pray for them and that they change and that they start to get right with you. And if we have spoken out against them in the past, we ask for forgiveness on that. We just pray in all our ways to constantly do better and learn more. In your son's holy and precious name, Jesus Christ Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So, if y'all had any kind of time like I did, You had a lot of different stuff to point out from the listening yesterday. But before we get into that, today is the 19th. Oh, I didn't write down tomorrow's yet. All right, so Numbers chapter 33 to Deuteronomy chapter 8. Again, that's Numbers 33 to Deuteronomy 8.
Got it.
All right. You got that too, Charles?
Got it.
All right. So, Charles, why don't you go ahead since you're so dead? Go ahead with yours first.
All right. Give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. Scroll down. Numbers chapter 22, verses 15 to 35. Balaam's or Balaam's donkey stopping, seeing the angel of God before he goes to see Balak. Numbers 23. It's supposed to be verse 11 to another one, but this is where Balaam tells Balak that, hey, God's taking care of the children of Israel. God doesn't want you to do this or that. But Balak is taking it as, you're blessing my enemy, not curse. I brought you here to curse him, not bless him. What are you doing? And of course, further into Numbers 23, where this is the same chapter where Balak is trying to offer all these different things and trying to beat the children of Israel, but he can't. That was that funny chapter we went through with him offering, oh, I'm going to offer this, I'm going to offer that. Come with me, I'm going to
7
offer
different
this.
offerings on
Come with
7
the
different
other.
mountains.
That was just dumb. Numbers 20. I got more, but I'm gonna stop with this one.
Yeah.
Numbers 25. This is the
Remember,
most
we want to
important
keep it
one.
to no more than 3.
Yeah, this is the most important one. Numbers 25, verses 6 to 13. Phineas showing his loyalty to God when he killed the man from the children of Israel and that Midianish or Midian, if I'm saying it, or Midianite woman,
Midianites.
the woman when they they went, children of Israel going into Baal Peor, and God was mad, and Moses like, what's going on, y'all? But Phineas showed like, oh, I need to get rid of this. I need to get rid of this plague before it gets even worse. And then yeah, but yeah, that was the
Exactly.
most important one for me with Phineas. That's all I got.
All right. Some pretty good one. You were on the edge for one of them that I was going to point out. You didn't quite get it, though. So it'll be interesting. All right. Thomas,
He
don't
right in
forget
the
to
middle of
unmute.
my, he right in the middle of mine though, never fails. Uh, Numbers 22 verse 1 to 35. We got Balak sees what happens to the
You said
Amorites.
1 to 35?
Yeah. So we got Balak sees what happens to the Amorites. Moab is afraid, for there's a lot of the children of Israel. So he sends a messenger to Balaam asking for him to curse the people so he'd be able to drive them out. Balak. God appears to Balaam in a dream and tells him, don't do it. The next day, we got Balak messenger trying to promise him all these things of silver, jewelry, and high stature and all that stuff like that. So in the morning, dude wakes up. He ends up still going. God is mad now. He made God
No.
angry.
You were so
Hold on,
close
hold on,
on
hold on.
it.
No, I got it. Let me just read it. I got it. Hold on. So Balaam, not in a dream, telling her not to go and not to curse the people, but he does it anyway. So God sends uh, an angel in the way that causes the donkey he's riding to like detour from his path and fall down in the midst of that, hurting Balaam. Then God, so he starts beating the donkey 3 times, and God finally opens his eyes. I mean, he has a donkey talking to him. He opens the donkey's mouth, Like, bro, why you beating on me? When that came up, I thought about Shrek. Donkey, why you beating on me? I thought about
Exactly.
that. So why are you beating on me? Like he's like, if I had a sword, I'd kill you right now. It's like you gonna kill me since you know me since birth. You've been using me since I was a babe. And he's like, nah, you probably right. Then he opens his eyes, he sees an angel in the way, and he ends up falling on his face. I'm talking about Balaam here. And he apologizes. Like, I'm sorry for my sins. I should have listened to you. So God is like, nope, too late, too late. You're gonna go ahead and go with Balak and them back to wherever they're going. But in the midst of all that, I need for you to only say what I say, only say what I give you to say. He's like, all right, yeah, that's cool. And then we get into chapter 23, and Charles brought that up. But that's what I had.
One problem in the context you got incorrect. You
What
were
was that?
so close on it. But it goes to show why the listening is good for noticing things. It's not good for getting context. When you said God told him not to go and he went anyways, that's not what happened. So it was a 3-step. First, they sent the messages, and just as you said, God told him no. Cool. Second time, Balak says that he'll give him all this stuff, and Balaam responds to him immediately, telling him through these messengers that,
That I
look,
can,
I don't care.
yeah.
I don't care if you give me all the money you got in your storehouses. I'm not going to speak differently than what God says, more or less. It don't matter.
Well,
I'm only saying
I
what
could
God
have
does.
said all that. I just chose not to say it. I know. I
No, no, no,
remember
no,
every
no. The
second bit.
part where you slipped up is the next part.
Okay.
And this is one of the ones that pointed out to me because I said it wrong last time I went through this. I made the same mistake you did. In the dream, in verse 20, is where God says it. And God came unto Balaam at night and said unto him, if the men come to call thee, rise up and go with them. But yet the word which I say unto thee, that shalt thou do. And then in verse 21, and Balaam rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and went. He went with them. It never
You know
said
what's
they came to call
crazy?
him.
You
He
know
just
what's
went with them.
crazy?
Yeah.
That right there, I read it as if they come and call you and ask you to rise up with them and go with them, I don't care. This is the word I told you to do. And that's not to go. That's what I took that as.
Mm.
Do you see that? If you go back and read that, that's how I
Yeah.
look. That's how I seen it.
I can understand
Like,
that confusion
like I don't care what they told you. I told you this, and I told you not to go. That's what I'm saying.
because you read the rise up and go with them as what they said.
Yes.
If they come to call thee, rise up and go with them. But there was nothing there that said anything along the lines of saying. Remember when
Okay.
we were going through about the aha we were reading?
Yeah.
There was something to back that up. The aha made no sense until you look at it in that context. Here we have a different situation. So contextually, he's telling him to go with them if they come to call him. But in the 21, we didn't get them coming to him. He saddled up and went to them.
True. True. I see where you're getting at.
That's why in verse 22, it said, and God's anger was kindled because he went.
Mm. Right. He didn't go in the order of which he said it was okay to go.
Well, not just the order. Think about it from God's perspective. If he did not go, if he waited for them to call him, Look at his where is it? Look at Balak's answer or response to him. He's all happy he
Ah,
came through and like that, right? He's all happy and all that. But
yeah.
so if you think about from that perspective, there's a little bit of surprise. If Balaam had not gone to them, there was a possibility that this time they don't go to call him, that they finally gave up. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like you got somebody bullying you or making fun of you or doing wrong by you time and time again. And then the one time you finally respond was the one time they were supposedly going to give up. But now that you've responded, now they're going to continue. Just that last little bit. You just got to get past that last little bit. And that was actually part of my section was because of that. So now you guys did all the 23 stuff, so I'm gonna leave that alone, except for in verse 11. There was one thing in Charles's portion that I wanted to bring up, really did, and that was in 23:11. Oh no, not the 11. What am I thinking about? 27. My bad, my bad. Yeah, I was done. Yeah, 23 was the verse. 22 was the one I wanted to point out because this always stands out to me. God brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. Obviously, unicorn does not mean unicorn. It means a one-horned rhinoceros. It's an expression of strength. But let's go to the one that I was going to say for 27 in verse 6 through 10. Now, 6 through 11. During this time, this is a whole section on how to give an inheritance if you don't have a son to give the inheritance to. So that was interesting to me because it's like, well, what do you do in that situation? If they're supposed to give the inheritance to the oldest son, then what are you supposed to do? What if you don't have them available? And it goes down the list entirely, going through it. And then the bigger ones, like in chapter 30 and 32. But in 30, verse 3 through 5. And in that one, this I thought it stood out to me because it goes into the point on, well, what are you supposed to do if you can't complete a vow and it's outside of your control? It's not something you just gave up on, but it's outside of your control. And it brings up if if the woman was unable to because her husband or her father, when he hears this vow, doesn't allow it to go through, then she is forgiven of that. So if there's a vow that is made and you are incapable, it's 100% outside of your control, you couldn't do it, you would have forgiveness for that. And the last ones I'll bring up, 3 portions of it, is chapter 32 in verse 5 and verse 17 to 22. So verse 5, because it was pointing out the point, wherefore said they, if we have found grace in thy sight, let this land be given unto thy servants for a possession. This was when the children of Israel had gotten to the point of the river from the promised land, but they haven't gotten over to the actual promised land yet. But some of them see the land and everything, and they're sitting here like, oh man, this land is amazing. I don't even care to go over to the promised land. I want this land here. 2.5 tribes were feeling that. And there was this whole discussion all throughout 32, but it boiled down to the last portion, 17 to 22, which is not the end of the chapter, it's just the last of that portion where it matters. In 17, But we ourselves will go ready, armed, before the children of Israel, until we have brought them into their place, and our little ones shall dwell in the fenced cities, because of the inhabitants of the land. And we will not, well, not end, we will not return unto our houses unto the children of Israel until the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance. So when there was a commitment made and they saw something they wanted before they could finish the commitment, they were not allowed to get that blessing until they finished their commitment. And that really stood out to me. Yeah, I get it. You want to go on this, but you don't jump to a new one when you already have commitments. And that was something for our day to day that stuck out to me. For example, let's say, Thomas, you made a commitment to do something. Then let's say, what would be a good example? Uh, oh, you made a commitment to be on Bible study. But then something pops up where you got a friend from basic high school gets back in contact with you. And they're going to come to Iowa, and they saw that you live in Iowa, or connected through me or Charles found out you live in Iowa, and they want to visit with you. And they got a few hours, about 5 hours to be able to visit. Yeah, I understand. It's understandable you want to visit them, but you got a prior commitment. So you need to keep your commitment before you do your own thing. So in that situation, you can still hang out with them and have fun, but you would need to plan it around Bible study. You would need to set some time at like 3 o'clock Pacific time or 7 o'clock Pacific time for you guys to be able to hang out. So that way you'd still be able to enjoy everything, but it also doesn't get in the way of things you've already committed to doing, like the Bible study and like the worship service. So you guys can understand why I say why that one stuck out to me with everybody. I mean, how many times, Charles, have we had people on here that the reason that they don't stay is because it's too much of a commitment for them to give up an hour and a half.
A lot.
Yeah. We weren't even doing this Bible listening and explaining portion at the time. This is new. So they don't even have the excuse of having it. Well, it's gotten up to 2.5 hours one time. They don't even have that excuse. So it goes to show the priority. It goes to show the setup. It goes to show every part of it. We have to finish our commitments before we do our personal benefits or before making new commitments. We have to take those into account. So, with all that in mind, does anybody have anything else they would like to add or say before we close it out? All right. Then I'll go ahead and close it out. And Charles, if your AC is still giving you a problem, go ahead and stay over at my spot tonight.
What am I gonna sleep on?
What do you mean? I got the mattress in my room. I got the extra air mattress in the closet. I got the 2 chairs, and you know that's comfortable enough to sleep in those chairs.
I forgot about the air mattress.
Yeah, there's multiple things.
I would take that
Good.
offer.
I mean, because you need to be rested, and you know I got the shower and everything there.
Yeah, I
So
got you.
if it's still not working out there, go ahead and just stay the night at my spot.
All right. Appreciate it.
Yep. All right. So now with that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. Bye, y'all.